I'm Adam Valdez. I'm a visual effects supervisor at MPC, the moving picture company in London, and I just supervised our work on The Jungle Book. And we contributed the bulk of the film, creating a lot of the hero characters in these full CG environments. I got a phone call quite early on from Dave Terratero, who's the VFX executive at Disney, and they were talking about the approach to the film. They were asking, do you want to have a look at making this film with us? We have a really ambitious idea of how to make it. We have this filmmaker who's on board with this plan, and I went down to meet with Jon Favreau shortly thereafter, and just had kind of a casual discussion about the film, a conceptual discussion, from everything from how to shoot it physically to how to go about it as an animated feature in terms of story process. And then in short order, Rob Legato was brought onto the project as the film's overall visual effects supervisor. And Rob was coming to the film after some recent work on Hugo, where he had done a lot of virtual camera work and synthetic environments. And John and Rob started to formulate their plan for how to shoot the movie. And I was taking on the bulk of the film. In the end, Weta Digital has done the ape-based sequences, but MPC has done sort of the rest of the movie. So we were going to have to generate something on the order of 90 minutes of material, full CG in full stereo, where you're generating most of the frame, because the ambitious plan was to shoot the actor Mowgli, against a blue screen. So you're going to have 95% of the image would be blue. So from there, my task evolved into this role where I had to think about how to help them shoot plan, how to help them character design, and then also get my company's team up to speed technically with all of the great people we have at the studio, how to deliver the thing in the end. And so I went to Los Angeles and spent about 10 months there. And I brought a team over with me from London, some of our top leads of different areas like characters and environments and technical. And we worked with the filmmakers and the production designer and the DP and the editor, and we were all together in an office building in LA, figuring out just how to do this thing. And so every day during the pre-production phase, I sort of did the rounds. I would spend my mornings talking to London, working with those artists, advancing the art that was happening there, the creature designs and the effects tests that were happening. And I'd spend a good part of my day with John and the Previs group, and with Rob and Andy Jones, who was our an overall film animation supervisor. And they would be working on the previs aspects, and my team was working hand in hand with all these people in preparing how to shoot the movie, pre-lighting scenes, art directing things, creating extended sets, working with the physical art department. And then once the shoot started, I would split my day roughly attending the shoot and keeping all of those plates spinning. After we shot the film, I came back to London and led this effort in London to complete the movie. And we had a large team in Bangalore in India as well. So our group, I'm very much not alone in this. In the London studio, you've got a good, I would say, dozen key individual area leads, people who are looking after sets or characters or effect simulation or lighting, that sort of thing. And all of them, and also one of our other visual effects supervisors, Charlie Henley, who's a wonderful guy who came onto the project in the middle to really help galvanize the lighting and compositing setup for the movie, and then he supervised a few sequences alongside me. So we had a really great team in London, and so I had to, along with my producer Phil Greenlow, we sort of just kept the project moving. And in the very end, when it comes to the last weeks, I'm literally sitting in a little review suite all day long from roughly 9 in the morning to 11 at night, just reviewing shots and just looking at work all day long. So you go from early meetings about how to even do it to a step-by-step approach of how to shoot the thing and build the art and build all the components. And over time, your role evolves into a very kind of focused, narrow beam of just staring at images until they're finished and getting them delivered. So visual development is a broad concept that really involves everything from character design to lighting to color palettes to the feel of the surfaces and materials that you're creating in the computer. We call it look dev internally, and there's different departments have stages of look dev. And then you have designers doing concept art, or you have in our asset group that does all of the creation of the objects and the characters. You have artists that specialize in sculpting, which will actually sculpt a character. So you have a lot of basic fine art skills involved in computer graphics and animation. And what's really probably the scariest and coolest part of what we're doing is when you leap into a movie and you say, we have this idea in our head and we have a few key images that are making us excited, and we want to make a movie that looks like and feels like this. But now you have to realize it. And that leap from inspirational images or just what's in some director's head or a production designer's head to the final deliverable is a huge amount of effort. This film required us to ride an edge, I would say, of heightened reality. There was never any desire on anybody's part in the filmmaking group to do a stylized film or an animated film. The intention has been from the beginning that we wanted it to feel like you filmed it. You went out to a location and you shot this. And yet, the wish fulfillment component of the movie, the I'm a little kid living with animals, doesn't that sound cool? What's that like component of the movie required an exaggeration of scale of the world and the animals. That was a huge choice right at the beginning of the movie to make it feel like a small boy in a big world. So that took some time to figure out how to give you that impression. How do you make it look like a boy in a huge world, not a miniature boy? And it turned out one of the biggest things is plants and leaves. The size of a leaf turns out to be a human reference point for scale. So you can have a huge tree with normal sized leaves and you know it's a big tree. If you just scale a tree up really big, it just looks like you're small now and compared to the tree. So there's little weird things like that we discovered along the way. And then all of the animals are large, and that created kind of unique problems in shooting and previs because the eye lines had to then be tracked very carefully. We really had to establish the height of where characters' eyes were when you were shooting the boy. So you end up with this like intention of how you want the movie to feel, and then you discover through design process and trial and error what are the things that give you that, and then you have to practically be mindful of it all the time. The talking animals thing in this movie, the challenge of doing a talking animal, that was everybody's concern. Because we've all seen movies like that before. Of course, many people remember the movie Babe from a long time ago, the George Miller film, which sort of, for the first time, I think, partially out of what computer graphics could do, the limits of technology, but also a standard way of working with real animals, a tradition of doing that in films, established a very nice marriage between what felt completely natural behavior and selective editing and choosing just the right takes of real animal behavior and then augmenting that very slightly. We didn't think exactly like that. We opened up any possibility at the beginning to process. But in the end, actually, that's a good recipe. And since we don't really use animals in filmmaking anymore, we couldn't, do that approach anyway. And plus, obviously, you can't use a tiger next to a 10-year-old. So you had to start with fully animated characters. But we often sourced clips, video clips of animals, and used it as a basis for action. So you could take a line of dialogue and you could piece together movement reference that seems to indicate the body language of that moment, and then the animator could follow that and then enhance it a little bit. And that keeps you grounded in reality. I mean, in terms of development and figuring things out, we started thinking about how to understand animal body language. And that's like the scientist's approach. How does a dog or a wolf show fear or concern? Well, it turns out that doesn't get you very far, because if we all understood that, then we could all read animals naturally, but we don't. So actually, anybody who's been on the internet and seen a funny clip of a dog or a cat doing something that seems human, but it's real, a dog that looks guilty because it just raided the garbage can or something like that. You see those funny clips. And this dog looks absolutely guilty to you. I mean, as a human, I see that dog and I completely believe that dog feels guilty. Okay, well, that's what you do. You find, when do animals do things that feel like something to a person? That's the answer. So all of these solutions just require experimentation along the way, trying things, trying techniques out until you get a routine down that actually gives you the right result. So you're facing a movie like this and it's in the natural world, and why wouldn't you just go shoot in India, or at least do backgrounds or something in India and bring them home or something? And it turns out there's a bunch of really good reasons not to do it that way. And I think there was a general agreement pretty early on in the process that we wouldn't do it with any background images filmed. So the biggest thing actually is that John wanted to approach the movie with an animated feature process. That implies building it slowly over time, finding the picture, honing it down, and making it very tight. So the last cut you have is a product of storyboarding in rough form, prevising, editing, adding sound, seeing if a scene works, throwing out pieces that don't work, rewriting stuff, reshooting again, and getting it very polished. It's an intention for not only a filmmaking approach of process, but a result, that the result is tight and it feels dense with story, and every shot really needs to be there. And that's a tradition that I think animation has established. He really wanted to pursue that process and that kind of feeling for the film. That makes it very hard to go out and shoot for 5 weeks, because when you shoot with physical production, it's so expensive that you go out and you shoot and that's it. What you bring home is what your movie's going to be then edited from. So that's a good reason to keep the environments and the worlds and the cameras and everything a little more fluid and to find it. The other thing is, logistically, when you shoot with children, you can only work so many hours in a day, so that makes it very hard to go on location and travel a bunch of filmmakers someplace and be working every day on location. The other thing is, we really wanted to create a heightened feeling for the movie. And it turns out that a lot of people who go to highly dense jungle-like environments or foliage-based environments end up quite frustrated with the compositions and the ability to control light and the ability to really craft something a bit special. It kind of just looks like salad when you shoot into the jungle. It's all the same. It turns into a field of leafy green shapes and a kind of a checkerboard of light and shadow. And you don't get that ability to really craft photography that easily. So I think all of these reasons add up to, you have practical ones, you have filmmaking process ones, and then you have what's the final photograph going to look like. And they all add up to, no, this is going to be something a bit concentrated and special and kind of heightened. And to do that, we need the ability to craft it